Singapore was on a knife's edge of a terror attack after a teenager plotted to stab as many as he could in a Tampines neighbourhood. But he was arrested just weeks before he could execute his plan. The 17-year-old student is a staunch supporter of terror group Islamic State. He was detained under the Internal Security Act due to the extent of his radicalisation. The Home Affairs Minister says, compared to past cases, this one came the closest to being carried out. Alif Amsyar reports.
The heart of busy Tampines, home to thousands, young and old, going about their daily lives in peace. Yet, unbeknownst to all, this seemingly safe neighbourhood became the focal point of a disturbing mission. It's where a youth radicalised by terrorist propaganda mapped out a chilling plot. His goal? To kill as many non-Muslim males as he could.
School holidays will be even more crowded. You see how crowded it is. People are walking by, and this boy was inspired by ISIS propaganda, which glorified suicide knife attacks. And he knew that he would be intercepted by the agencies, the police, and he had made up his mind to die in the course of the attack because he wanted to become a martyr. So I would say this is a very close shave, and it's fortunate that ISD arrested him in time.
That arrest came just weeks before the school holidays in September, when foot traffic would surge. The location for his planned killing spree surrounded by facilities many used.
From the open space area where the youth had planned to carry out the attack, it only took me about 5 minutes to reach this junction, with lots of residents out and about as well. Now here you can also get a sense of how close it is to other community spaces. For example, there are 2 schools behind me, as well as a place of worship.
These were his weapons of choice. He felt that he could wield them effectively and inflict maximum damage on his targets by stabbing them in the neck. He also practiced motions using different grips with the scissors and toured his planned route in June.
In this case, the young boy's parents noticed that he was watching videos by foreign preachers. They advised him not to watch those videos. And when he did not listen, an option would have been to alert the authorities. Often the people we have picked up are people who have been reported to us by parents, other family members, teachers. So the community is a very important line of defense.
One analyst says that ongoing regional conflicts elsewhere could continue to fuel self-radicalisation here, especially among youths.
We know that in Southeast Asia, some of these messaging has called for action on the part of, people in Southeast Asia to sort of take up arms, to either go to Gaza to join the fighting or carry out other kinds of activities in support of the extremists in the Middle East. So the Gaza conflict, as long as it carries on without any conclusion, unfortunately will be a radicalizing influence, particularly because of social media.
Apart from this latest case, 4 other self-radicalized youths have been detained by authorities since 2020. They acted alone and sought to use weapons that they could easily access, as these required little time and preparation to execute their plans.
Tampines community is reeling after details emerged of the terror plot mapped out by the detained teenager. Local businesses and residents told CNA they never imagined such an incident could occur in their quiet neighbourhood. Now, still, many are uncertain how to respond if an attack like this were to happen. An expert says a whole-of-community approach is crucial for prevention. Charlotte Lim has more.
A heartland hub where people of all ages and backgrounds call home. CNA spoke to several nearby residents and many expressed shock at the news, describing their town as a peaceful neighbourhood.
I feel like quite shocked, and it's very sudden because it's not the behaviour of this neighbourhood. We of course are very friendly, very inclusive.
I was completely shocked. I was really shocked, and I feel like this kind of thing is like, we don't expect that in Singapore, a place like Singapore, right?
The teen who planned this brutal mission selected a location frequented by many on an ordinary day, filled with coffee shops, fruit stalls, and one of the area's largest supermarkets. The community is now grappling with the shock of this discovery by the authorities.
I feel very surprising and very scared what can happen in this area.
I also asked if they feel adequately prepared for a potential terrorist attack. Many responded with uncertainty.
很难接受，只能准备啊，因为你讲准备，我不相信每个人都有办法去准备，因为发生的很突然，你去怎样准备？
A national program aims to prepare people and businesses for the threat of terrorism. SG Secure at Workplaces provides essential knowledge specifically for frontline businesses, including heartland shops. However, an organization representing small and medium enterprises stresses that more action is needed to adequately equip these businesses with the necessary information and resources.
I think that the shops are definitely not well prepared at all. I think that overall, I think there are activities and there are programs to level up the preparedness. But by and large, the participation percentage in terms of, overall versus the shops and you look at overall the population of the businesses, right? I think it's quite low.
A security expert says this incident shows heartland areas are not immune to attacks.
So the high footfall still factors within the notion of when the individual is conducting or wanting to conduct the attack. So density of population being the first, less likelihood of being detected because it's an area wherein the individual might be familiar with and often frequent. And as a result, there is a certain level of familiarity in terms of movement, familiarity of the physical areas within even a heartland setting.
Until now, some residents may have taken their peaceful neighbourhood for granted. And Dr. Jolene cautions that this incident is a wake-up call, highlighting the community's vital role in defending against terror attacks.
And for more on this, I'm now joined by Dr. Nor Huda Ismail, visiting fellow at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies. Dr. Nor, welcome. So we know that the youth's family and friends were completely unaware of his plan, despite his sharing of radical materials online. What might have contributed to this very apparent disconnect?
I think at least there are two, the obvious one. Number one is a communication gap. Oftentimes, parent and friend, they don't really talk openly about what is going on online. And secondly, it's about technological gap as well, because young people tend to have their own ways to hide their own identity, maybe put some password, so that parent cannot really access. So that is two things that contributed to the fact that parents and even friends cannot really understand or cannot really understand deeply what is going on.
So it's communication gap.
Yes, technological barrier. Yes.
Investigations reveal that his parents saw him watching foreign preachers.
Yes.
They warned him, but he ignored them, and instead he took steps to conceal his activities. In this instance, is reporting to authorities the only option if an individual is suspected to be radicalized?
Yeah, I think luckily Singapore has a good system where there is a system, if you are radicalized and you are reported to the government, there is a system where the government, let's say you have an RRG, you have interagency, you have MUIS, will act as a mentor, guide this radicalized individual to go back to the mainstream. So I know it'd be painful to report initially, but I think it is the beneficial not only for those individuals, but for the family, but also the whole community. But it is very important to emphasize that this phenomenon of online radicalization is not the problem of one single community or one Malay community or one Muslim community. It's a global, because now we are seeing coming from the Muslim. But if you go to the West, mostly online radicalization is about white supremacists, it's about, Christian radicals. So we have to look at this as a global phenomenon.
But how do online platforms turn a seemingly ordinary youth into a supporter of extremist ideologies?
Because when you go online, you immerse yourself, what we call it, algorithm drag you into rabbit hole of radicalization, create filter bubble, confirmation bias, when you don't have other alternatives. So your identity become immersed into that narrative. So there is a process of identity fusion. You've immersed. So you cannot distinguish between fact and constructed reality and sometimes twisted reality portrayed in social media.
So how can family and friends be more vigilant than in spotting radicalized individuals? What signs should they watch for, and could these differ by age?
Yeah, I think, of course, it's very different. For young people, maybe they tend to, some of them are very reclusive, and then they trust to observe a radical website, they start to share, they don't want to share, but for others will be very different. But the fact is, when we start to see other people radicalized online, I think it is better that we, as a parent or as a friend, start to talk to the authorities, because there is a system to help those radicalized online to start new life.
Okay.
As someone who has been working like me, working a lot in de-radicalization, rehabilitation, not only in Singapore, but also Indonesia, Malaysia, globally, I can see that online radicalization is getting shorter, the process, but the way we help them to go back to society relatively faster, because they are radicalized in constructed reality. Unlike group like JI, it took years, forever for them. Yeah, indoctrination.
In this case, though, it is a 17-year-old student whom you say doesn't come from a deeply religious background. So how challenging will it be to rehabilitate such a person?
Yes, again, I keep saying in many different platforms that no one was born as a terrorist. There is a process of joining and also a process of leaving. And those who are attracted to the narrative online is relatively easier compared to those radicalized, offline. Because when radicalized offline, there is a lot of processes, there is initiation, there is military training, there is a bay'ah, even sometimes you have to get married, study in the same school. That bonding, thicker and hard to break. Unlike online, you imagine, you create, you immerse yourself to such a third reality. It's not real, but for young people, they are real,
All right, Dr. Nor Huda, appreciate your insights.
Thank you.
As always, that was Dr. Nor Huda Ismail, visiting fellow at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies. And still to come, breaking ground